Donald Trump has delivered a letter to Iran declaring that they have till May 1st to make a deal. And the deal is essentially giving up their ballistic missile program, giving up their allies in the popular mobilization units in Iraq and Hezbollah, giving up, of course, their nuclear program. They won't even be allowed to refine uranium for civilian purposes. It is total capitulation is what's being demanded. And Iran has made clear that this is unacceptable and that they will not negotiate directly with the US while they are under threat and being menaced. So they will only negotiate through the government of Oman. They will not negotiate directly with the United States, which is a rebuke to Donald Trump. And so the Trump administration has initiated a massive show of force. This is the Diego Garcia Air Base in the Indian Ocean. It's roughly 3,500 kilometers from Yemen, 4,300 kilometers from Iran. There is an unprecedented buildup of U.S. military aircraft being brought to the island. 7 American B-2 bombers, 6 in-air refueling planes. I think some B-52s have been sent there. But the point of the B-2s is there are 2 takeaways here. The B-2s are supposedly able to penetrate Iran's integrated air defense systems without being detected. I don't know if that is true, that they'll be able to do that, but they also can carry extremely heavy bunker buster bombs in order to attack the Iranian nuclear facility at Fordo, which is deep underground. U.S. intelligence assessment has concluded that Iran can now produce a nuclear grade weapon in less than a week. And so, what the U.S. would do with a combined force of submarines, aircraft, is carry out decapitation strikes, attack the Iranian government, and then hope that they can attack Fordo in time to prevent them from rolling out a nuclear device. That's what this is, the message that's being sent here. And it's all being done at the Diego Garcia Air Base because supposedly Iran cannot reach it with its with its ballistic missiles. Perhaps they can reach it with ballistic missiles fired from a cargo ship. But this is an unprecedented show of force, and Trump is putting a gun to the leadership of the head of Iran's leadership right now. And why is he doing it? For the same reason the U.S. is bombing Yemen, because Israel wants him to. I don't think Trump wants a war with Iran. Do you?
In his mind, no. But again, I mean, we've seen him say so many things to get into office about opposing war only to reverse the policy. We talked earlier about Yemen. He criticized the bombing of Yemen on the campaign trail when Biden did it. He gets into office, and within a few months, he's already bombing Yemen on Israel's behalf. And look, what has happened before when there have been talks of diplomacy between the U.S. and Iran? Well, let me give 2 examples. In 2003, Iran had what's called a moderate president, Mohammad Khatami, and he sent George W. Bush a letter offering to resolve all outstanding differences between Iran and the U.S., including Iran's support for Hezbollah. And at the time, the Ayatollah Khamenei said to Khatami, "Don't bother doing this. The U.S. will interpret this letter as a sign of weakness." But Khatami sent this letter anyway, which shows actually that the Ayatollah, at least then didn't have full control over foreign policy. And what did Bush do? He ignored the letter, didn't even respond to it, and indeed saw this as a sign of weakness because a few years later, the Bush administration ramped up its policy of trying to undermine Iran by empowering Sunni forces, including ultimately ISIS in the region, to undermine the axis of resistance, which Iran was the heart of. So that's one historical anecdote about what happens when Iran tries to engage in diplomacy with the U.S. is they get ignored. And in fact, the U.S. sees it as a sign of weakness. And then you had the Iran nuclear deal, which Iran accepted. It was not easy to do that inside of Iran. There was a lot of pushback to it, but they did it. And what happened? Trump blew it up, and those who had advocated the Iran nuclear deal ended up looking really, really weak and humiliated inside Iran. So what does that do inside Iran to the willingness to try to engage in diplomacy and take U.S. overtures seriously? It's going to make people even more defensive. Understandably, when you have a record of the U.S. not only taking diplomacy as a sign of weakness, but meddling in Iran, going back to the 1950s when there was a U.S.-backed coup that overthrew Iran's government. So if Trump really is serious about diplomacy, he's going to have to do something really concrete to not just reverse his own record, but the longstanding U.S. record of using diplomacy to advance its hegemony and to ultimately try to fool Iran into doing something that will weaken itself. And Iran's just not going to go along with that.
The precedent is clear. Gaddafi gave up his weapons programs, including a nuclear weapons program, under the guidance of the West, and he got sodomized with a bayonet under the guidance of the West. Kim Jong-un produced ballistic missiles and a nuclear weapons program and demonstrated that they could deliver those nuclear weapons to U.S. assets in the Pacific. And he got Donald Trump crossing the DMZ to meet him for negotiations. And so you don't see Trump. I mean, of course, there isn't the same pressure from like a third party like Israel to attack North Korea, but you don't see the U.S. threatening to invade North Korea. They have deterrence. Iran either gets the deterrence that a nuclear weapon grants them, or these threats will continue to pile up. Israel under Netanyahu believes that it is in an existential war. We are in a period of late Zionism. It has unprecedented control over a U.S. administration. And I think these threats from Trump and Israel behind him need to be taken seriously by Iran. I don't know what deal Iran can hope to ink with a U.S. administration that won't be reneged upon. So I think we're careening towards some sort of conflict, and the only way out for Iran is to produce a nuclear weapon. That's my takeaway. I don't know how they can do it, but that's the lesson from other countries, Pakistan, North Korea, and Libya, which barely exists anymore as a country.
Well, according to the latest U.S. intelligence assessment, they're not doing that. They have not launched a nuclear weapons program or resumed. They're obviously engaged in enrichment, but not as part of a nuclear weapons program. That's the latest threat assessment that the Office of National Intelligence just put out.
Well, we'll be following it intensely over the coming weeks as the deadline approaches.